Hello everyone and welcome back to another DrAce video. Today I am going to show you how to improve in the wet weather conditions in MotoGP 24. I'm going to break things down for you so it's easy to learn and understand how to get better in the wet, and also teach you about how to understand what you should do in certain track conditions, and finally as well how to understand and nail flag to flag situations. Guys, I hope this video helps. If it does, let me know in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get on with the guide. So first things first then, this is the part where I like to call smooth is fast. Because the key to be better in the wet conditions in MotoGP 24 is to be smooth. Now that isn't easy for everyone. A lot of people have the push-pull tendencies to go full acceleration and zero acceleration to full brake to zero brake. This is about the middle ground, finding how to gently bring on that throttle, gently brake into the corners, and just treat the entire experience with more finesse. The key being is because when you get onto that acceleration and you really bring on the power, the rear wheel starts to lose grip, it starts to spin, and then it becomes difficult to bring on the acceleration. On the flip side, when you're trying to brake, this is wet conditions now. This track is slippy. It's not as easy as it is in the dry conditions, so therefore a full fist of brake is going to result in a crash much easier than it would in the dry conditions. So what I want you to focus on in this video is how much acceleration is being applied out of the corner. When the bike is not straight and it's trying to line up, how does the power get applied so it's gently enough so the rear wheel does not start to spin? Of course, on straights you can go full acceleration, you can choose to use a ride height device if you want to, but the braking and the turning is where everything's going to be that little bit more gentle. Not trail braking as much into the corner, not full acceleration out of a corner. That is how to improve in the wet weather conditions. Now I've got a couple of clips on here today to show you so you can really pay attention to each individual button press to show you how gentle things are meant to be. If you're having difficulty with finding the middle balance of that controller and finding that sort of finesse point, so a little tip I have for you guys as well to improve your finesse with the controller is to go onto a circuit and just lap around the entire track as slow as possible, not even reaching more than 80 miles an hour, just nice and gentle, slow movements with the analog stick, long turns, and just really gentle with that right trigger. See how long you can hold it without trying to increase or decrease acceleration. Just balance that throttle all the way through. It may seem unorthodox, but I guarantee that will give you the muscle memory that you need, and also to teach you how to find that middle ground with the right trigger. So when you come back to the wet weather conditions, you can balance that throttle exactly where you need to be, so when you feel that vibration of the controller, the wheel starts spinning, then you know to reduce acceleration, you know to reduce that throttle and reduce the pressure being applied on your right trigger. Now of course what we've discussed so far is not synonymous with just MotoGP, it's with everything. So even in Moto 2, where the bikes are a little bit more easier to ride, you can still be, and you still required to be, that little bit more smoother than you would in the wet weather conditions. Now one thing I will say with the Moto 2 bikes, probably more than Moto 3 and MotoGP, is you can be a little bit more aggressive with both the brakes and the acceleration compared to the other classes. One bit of advice I would give for both Moto 3 and Moto 2, but since Moto 2 is here at the moment, downshifting to first gear and accelerating out of those hairpins. Now what you might notice is I tend to do this thing where I sort of feather the throttle. I find that effectively negates the wheel spin that you can get. So if you are struggling with a finesse point, you can gently feather that throttle to get yourself through the wheel spinning, and also you get that feeling of when the wheel starts spinning and the tyre starts to skid, that's then when you can then bring on acceleration once that has stopped. That for me works extremely effectively. But as we move over to Moto 3 now, I actually found that with my electronic settings for the lightweight class, it was actually a little bit more difficult to be smooth on the throttle. It required that little bit more finesse when using the first gear. Now I am using TCS1, which is traction control on level 1, and I can increase it like I would advise for you guys if you're really struggling with wheel spin. but ultimately TCS1 feels more natural and more controllable to me, so I like to have a bit of slide and I'll be able to control it myself using that finesse that I've just been talking about for the past 5 minutes. Now, of course, out of certain corners with these Moto3 bikes, with TCS1, they are prone to sliding. The best way to learn and understand that when that happens to slide is you must react. And this is how all the time and practice that you're going to put into this game will teach you how to react. You have to have a proactive approach and try and avoid having the wheel spin, but when that eventually does happen, you've got to respond in 2 ways. First and foremost, don't panic, and second of all, fix the problem and be smooth on the acceleration. You see it in real life when a MotoGP rider has a small moment, they sit up out of the seat, straight back into the bike, reapply the throttle and calmly and collectively get back into the rhythm again. A lot of that comes with time and understanding and feeling the vibrations in the controller, understanding when a tyre slide is beginning to happen, just like there, right on the screen. It is going to happen, it does happen, you've just got to react to it in the best possible way. We always want to try and stay proactive, but it's not always possible because you can get a few unexpected slides throughout a race session. Now, before we move on, we've looked at full rain conditions. Now I want to take a look at the mixed, sort of dry, sort of wet conditions. It's a bit mixed at the moment. Now, of course, always the go-to plan here is to do everything you would on the wet, but with that little bit more aggression. You can be that little bit more quicker. You can be that little bit more daring upon the brakes. You can accelerate that little bit more, but still pay attention to the right trigger and the left trigger on the DualSense controller. A lot of it is still being applied the same way. There's just a few moments where I would say there's a little bit of an extra press. Maybe the analog stick is getting pushed a little bit more aggressively into the corner. Perhaps the right trigger is getting pushed down that little bit more. And on the brakes, you can trail brake that little bit more aggressively with the L2 button. So this will take a bit of time to master, but I can assure you, follow my advice that I've given you here today. Practice, practice, practice with the throttle control, the trail braking into the corners, feel the vibration of the controller, and ultimately be smooth. Aggressive, linear presses will not help you improve in the wet weather conditions in MotoGP 24. Remember, smooth is fast. And be smooth and be fast. So now on to the next topic of today's guide, and that is understanding track conditions. In this part of the video, I'm going to explain to you when to use the soft option rain tyres, when to use the medium rain tyres, and then eventually when to swap over to slick tyres. I don't think the game does a very good job in explaining how and when to choose those tyres, so I've done all the work here today, and I'm going to explain it to you this way. First and foremost, this is a completely sodden circuit. 100% rain precipitation right now on this track. Thus meaning we will be using the soft option rain tyres, both the front and the rear. You would gain no benefit from using the medium rear in conditions like these. Only when the track starts to dry is when you can consider using the medium tyres. So now on to the practice, and we are in the pits, and as you can see in the top left hand corner of your screen there, 74% rain precipitation is on the circuit right now. So we need to make a decision. Now the game is automatically going to tell you to choose the medium compounds for both the front and the rear. Well, I'm going to show you that is not necessarily the case. You can use the soft option, and at this stage, at that condition, soft option is the much better bet. So as you can see, we're now on track with the soft option tyres at around 74-75% rain coverage, and we're all right. The rear tyre is not burned up, the front tyre is not burning up under the brakes, and overall it feels like we're just riding in full wet conditions. So I don't know why the game recommends medium, but I can tell you there's nothing wrong with choosing the soft tyres at this stage of the session. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to skip ahead so you can now see the difference between how we started on lap 1 to now on lap 6. Only now we are really beginning to see the difference and the struggles of the soft tyre in the wet weather conditions. More so noticeable on that front tyre more than the rear. You can see it beginning to really light up red during the apex of the corners. which is not necessarily the worst thing in the world as we're still able to stay on the bike, but we are now getting to that territory where that soft option tyre is beginning to burn up too quickly and could cause a crash if we were not careful going into some of these apexes. So now we're back in the pits. You can now see the track has dried up a little bit more now, and it's down to roughly 30% rain coverage. The game is right to actually recommend the medium tyres because that is the tyres to be on at this stage. If we start going on the softs, they're going to burn up in a lap or two, which is not going to help you build any lap times or confidence for the race yet to come. So now we're out on circuit with the medium tyres, with rain precipitation coverage being at 30%, and now we're seeing the difference in the grip. The medium tyres in this sort of condition feel a lot more responsive than the soft did in full wet. We're getting to that point where the track is drying up almost quickly enough for the slick option tyres. We're not close enough yet. We'll get to that. But for the time being, these are the tyres to be on right now, and they feel brilliant. Almost as good as slick tyres. Conditions feel relatively comfortable, the rear tyre is not burning up, it's not sliding, and even into the final corner for the Adrian Campos corner, it feels rather smooth. Now, one thing you will notice though is upon the brakes, those front tyres may start to burn up quite quickly. And that'll simply happen because those rain tyres are meant for rainy conditions. If we're now going on dry patches and being aggressive with the bike, it is going to start to burn the rubber extremely quickly. That will result in crashes quicker than the wet conditions. So we have to be really careful now and gauge where the track is dry and where it isn't, and understand whether we can now change to the slick tyres. And as you're seeing now, look how warm that front tyre is getting. Couple of corners ago I was struggling to get it stopped. It is feeling okay, but we are definitely that territory where we're going to have to consider swapping over to the slicks. Now the gamble is that if we swap to the slicks too early, the track is going to have a lot of wet patches and we could crash. So we have to now either wait until the track dries a little bit more, or just stay as we are and keep on churning out those lap times. But to save time, we are going to head back over to the pit and check out the track conditions. And as you can see, 17% rain coverage on this circuit right now. For me, that is the go-to time, but the game will not recommend it. The game will tell you to stay on those medium tyres simply because there is water on the circuit. Fine, that is okay. It would make sense for practice or rainy conditions for a race, but right now, we want to see the difference. And let me show you now the difference for taking that gamble early with the slick tyres. So initial feedback for jumping onto the slick tyres at rainy conditions at 17%, it is fantastic. A little bit cold in a couple of corners because we do have to really get the heat up now in these slick tyres. It's a very cold day. Wet patches are still there on the circuit as well, which will continue to cool the tyres down. But now we have a chance to really use the dry patches on this circuit to find extra speed and lap times. We should be able to produce some solid lap times once we get the temperature into those slick tyres. And now not even halfway around and the lap times are beginning to come in. That delta's already looking extremely positive. This was the right call to jump onto the slick tyres. Now, of course, it's all down to confidence and preference, but I would recommend to stick at the chart of being less than 20% slick tyres, anything above 20 all the way up to about 70% stay on the mediums, and above 70% up to 100 use the soft rain tyres. And it should be that simple for every other track. I've recorded just this one here in Valencia, but I did try it on multiple tracks and it was roughly the same experience throughout. So definitely stick to that plan when racing, either in career mode or online in those live GPs. Across the line, and it's a massive difference. So now on to the final topic of today's guide. I want to teach you about flag-to-flag situations here in MotoGP 24. Now in the game's guides, it always tells you that when the flag-to-flag occurs, when the white flag comes out, go into the pits and change your tyres immediately. Now that isn't always the case because there's a few things to factor in. how many laps are remaining, what the conditions are like at the time when you go in, and should you go in due to the condition of the track with the racers behind you or front of you. There's a lot to actually take in without just immediately, right, white flag is out, let's go in. So what I'm going to explain to you is my thought process being in this situation right now. We're on lap 4 of 7 laps, therefore we'll have more than 3 laps to complete here in Misano. First feedback is, the bike doesn't feel all that bad right now. Yes, it's beginning to lose a bit of grip, but I think I can still do a relatively decent lap time. A couple of other things I'll factor in now is mistakes like this, going wide into turn 1. We do now need to start thinking about being that little bit more gentle with the bike, and we also need to think about going into the pits. So my initial thought right now is the next lap and we're in. Point of gauging whether it's wise to stay out another lap or to go in immediately is also how the tyre condition is right now. And as you can see, tyres are still relatively warm. The green, they're good. The blue, they're cold. Only the right hand side of the tyres now are beginning to struggle a little bit. So that's something to pay attention to. And it's something to factor in with us making that mistake into turn 1, because one more lap ahead of this and we could be in real tough time with track conditions. Prime example now is something else to factor in. Raul Fernandez has just crashed into Toronto. This is looking more and more bleak for us to be staying out on this motorcycle. So I would say right now it is time to make that decision. You don't get long to choose and you have to make that decision pretty promptly, and I'm making that decision right now. We're in third sector now. Tyre is freezing cold. Bike is struggling to turn. It's definitely time to turn in. So we've been in the pits. Unfortunately, I was a little bit too quick in the pits and I earned myself a penalty. But we have now come out ahead of where we were when we made that decision to stay out in the first place. Obviously, when we take the penalty, we're going to drop further down, but that was my error rather than the decision of going into the pits. Now, unfortunately, there has been a slight glitch here, which I've noticed has been happening more often. But I've actually chose to use the soft option rain tyres because at this condition, it is wise to stay on the softs, and it's going to be completely raining all the way to the end. Other problem I found that is, even though I've changed the brake disc to my 7-inch that I prefer, I don't think it's quite worked. So you may encounter a glitch with the flag to flag, which unfortunately I don't know a fix for, but I thought it was worthwhile mentioning nonetheless. But for here in Misano, the flag to flag situation with a 20-second, 25, 30-second delay in the pits has more or less worked out. With the long lap penalty, I'm pretty much where I were, but other than that, it was a good decision to go in when we did. Now, I'm sure we would all like to replicate what Brad Binder did in 2021 by staying out on slick tyres and winning in Austria when the rain was heavily pouring down. But what I can tell you is that is possible, but it all depends on when the rain comes. So we're on lap 4 of 7 now. We have more than 3 laps, or just less than 3 laps once we cross the line, to survive the rainy conditions with the slick tyres. Now, I can tell you this, after long testing and practicing, the only way that's possible is if it's 2 laps when the rain starts. If the rain starts any sooner than that, then unfortunately you will have to concede and forget about it, because the track conditions can go from this with the soft option tyres to this. It is damn near impossible to get this bike stopped. You can't use your ride height device, you can't get the bike stopped, you can't accelerate. Everything is a mess in these conditions, and it's only a matter of time before all those riders who pitted come past and beat us. Right now we're okay, we have quite a bit of advantage, but the state of that tyre, I'm only trying to accelerate, now I'm just trying to brake, I can't stop the bike. It is practically impossible to stay on these slick tyres any more than what we are right now. The other riders on slicks, as you can see, are sitting ducks. Morbidelli, myself with Binder, Taka Nakagami, we're all just waiting to be picked off one by one. Alex Rins into the Rorsch corner, it's impossible for him to turn as well. This has not been a good idea. Don't try and beat the system. Go into the pits when needed and change your tyres. So staying on the slicks in wet conditions is a death sentence, but what's it like on the other side when the track begins to dry and you're still on the rain tyres? Well, I can tell you this actually works. Of course, you are going to lose grip, the tyres start to really struggle to turn in, but nothing to the same difficulty as the slicks in the wet. It is definitely possible to do 3 or 4 laps with rain tyres here in a circuit like Catalunya. Now, of course, one of the main reasons for that is the tyres will effectively then delaminate and become a slick itself. I don't know if the game will actually do that with that much in depth, but I can assure you 3 laps is more than sufficient for you to stay out on the rain tyres. The biggest things you're going to notice, which you can see straight away, is how warm that front tyre is becoming. The rear tyre will begin to follow suit as we get onto the power, but ultimately the better decision in this sort of situation is to stay out in the wet tyres. It will be far better than jumping into the pits and losing 20-30 seconds in the pits whilst the bike changes and then to redo all the work again. This one works. So my final bit of advice before I conclude today's guide video, and that is to make sure to set up both sets of motorbikes. Bike A is the bike you're currently on, which you will start the race with, and Bike B is your bike that you will swap over to during the flag-to-flag situation. So make sure both bikes are set up exactly how you want them to be. Simple change for myself is just to change the tyres and to change the rear brake disc. I much prefer the smaller brake disc rather than the large one. So if that's not changed, I'm going to have a bad time when I do eventually swap over. Of course, something else to mention as well is if you guaranteed to know that it is going to be a flag-to-flag situation, that you know it will begin to rain at a certain point, and you want to pit early, maybe then consider going for the medium tyres. If you're going to wait a little bit later for the rain to really fill the circuit, then go for the soft option tyres. But to be quite honest, I did a test of this, I tried both options out, and I didn't really notice that one was significantly quicker than the other. So if you want peace of mind, set it up with how you want it to be, but if you're not too worried about it, just leave as it is. But to be honest, that's pretty much it for my guide here today. I hope I've covered everything to teach you how to improve in the wet. If you're not sure in anything else, or if you want some extra assistance, or maybe you have some questions, let me know down below and I'll be happy to answer any queries you may have. So guys, thanks for watching the video. I sincerely hope you enjoyed. I hope it's helped you improve, and I'll see you in the next video. Like and subscribe. Ciao for now. Oh hi, didn't quite see you there. Good to see you're still here. If this video didn't quite set your appetite, then why not watch some more DrAce content by clicking the video shown on screen now. Furthermore, if you would like to follow me on social media, you can do so now with the links down in the description. Consider subscribing so you don't miss a single DrAce video.